I didn't know if I was going to be alone in the room or if there'd be 50 folks there. I just didn't know how many people were going to show up. And 18 did show up. And I got up in front of them. I told them about my real estate business. I told them about my dreams and my aspirations. I showed them a PowerPoint slide presentation, which was kind of the heart of the whole thing. And then I just flat out asked them to loan me money, and it worked.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Mike Murphy at JB Harrison Insurance, helping real estate investors to understand and choose their best options for all their insurance needs. Call 616-868-0050 or email mikem@jbhins.com. Hello and welcome to episode 157. One of the biggest questions real estate investors have is, where can I get more money to do more real estate deals? Or if you're just starting out, how do you get the funds to do your first deal? My guest today has the answers. Alan Cowgill teaches investors across the nation how to find win-win situations where you can find all the money you need to get deals done, and how to attract and convert folks into private money lenders. Alan will also be a featured speaker at the Michigan Landlord and Real Estate Investor Free Conference and Expo, which is happening right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 2019, February 21st through 23rd. And you can go to rpoaonline.org to register for free. Alan, can't wait to hear you speak at the conference. Thanks for being on the show today.
Well, thanks for asking me. And I'm greatly appreciate you guys asking me to come and speak, and the fact that we're doing this and sharing some information with some folks right up front.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. I know you've been doing this for a while. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Many years ago, I was broke. Even though I had a quarter century in corporate America, I was struggling to pay my bills. And I was successful in corporate America, but I was ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment, and kind of let you know what I was going through at the time. I had an old beat-up car that needed to have some money put in it for maintenance, and I was too busy paying my other bills, and I put that on the back burner. And one night on a very first date, this car paid me back. And you know it's going to kind of be an ugly story. So I was on a very first date, and I was dropping this lady off at her apartment, and I decided to walk her up to the door, and halfway up to the door, I heard something, and turned around and looked, my car had burst into flames. And can you imagine how embarrassing? Yeah, I know. You know, when I talk in front of groups, somebody in the back of the room will yell out "hot date." Well, I'll tell you, it's more like first and last date. I mean, you know how embarrassing it was standing there holding her hand, watching a fireman put my car out. And every morning when she woke up, the remembrance of that date was a burnt charred mark. So it kept me frustrated with my life, not knowing what to do. I looked into franchises, but I didn't have the money to do any of that. That year I did decide to invest, so I took my whole federal tax return, and my way of investing was plunk it down on lottery tickets. Well, lost on every ticket, kept me frustrated, and one night I couldn't sleep, worrying about paying my bills. 2 o'clock in the morning, I turned on the TV and started to channel surf, and I hit one of these real estate infomercials, and it got my attention. And I thought, I can do this, but I didn't have the money to buy the home study system because I spent my money that day on a lottery ticket. So I did have a credit card, and I used my credit card to get that system, and it changed my life. That year I bought 2 properties, the next year 5, the following year 18. Since that point in time, I've done hundreds of real estate deals. And half the deals I do are without monthly payments. And that's one of the things I will teach folks when I get up there, is how to do deals and not have to worry about monthly payments by using private lenders.
The infomercial that you saw, who was it?
It was Carlton Sheets.
Carlton Sheets, okay. It's funny, a lot of people on the show have got started from the Carlton Sheets method.
Yeah, I'm looking at the system right now. Still got it. What happened was, along the way, I started to buy more home study systems, and I started to go to live events, and I joined a RIA group in town, and I realized that the foundation of this business is exactly what you and I are doing right now, and I'll be doing up at when I talk for you, is education. It's everybody needs to get a solid education, and so I really saw that early on. and focused on that. And along the way, I heard this thing about private lenders and hard money lenders, and I thought they were the same, but actually they're distinctly different. Hard money lender charges fees, but with a private lender, I got to set the rules, and that was really appealing to me. There's only 4 parts of a real estate deal at the very top level. Number 1 is you got to find the property. Number 2 is you fund it. Number 3 is you fix it to enhance the value. And number 4 is you keep it long term or you flip it. So that second item was so critical to my success, and I had struggled along the way with banks, and in fact, I'd get like 4 properties, and they would change their internal rules, had nothing to do with me, and they would shut us creative real estate investors off. So I heard this thing about private money, and I realized that my mom might want to loan me some money. She had come into some money when my dad passed away, and she took that money and plunked it down on bank certificate of deposits. And she would drive 45 minutes one way to get a few pennies more on her CDs. And I knew that she wanted to make a higher rate of return. And so I went back to Mom and I said, you know, you're getting this paltry low rate of return on a bank CD. I can pay you 3, 4, 5 times what you're getting on your bank CD. I'll pay you monthly, simple interest only. I'll give you a mortgage, a promissory note, hazard insurance, and lender title insurance. And Mom jumped for joy. And that was my first private lender. I was ecstatic, and so was she. So it was just a win-win scenario.
What kind of return was she getting compared to what she was getting at the bank?
Well, at the bank around that time, it was about 3 to 5%, and I paid 15, and that was the going rate back then. And obviously, the economy's changed tremendously since that point in time. So I've been in this business since 1995, and Mom became my private lenders in 1997. And so along the way, I got more private lenders, but after a while, the economy changed and the rates changed, and I got feedback from my private lenders that 15% was too good to be true. So I lowered my interest rate, keep them happy. And I went to 10 and 12% at the time. 10% if they wanted monthly payments, and 12% if they'd let the money accrue and they'd get paid when I got paid, which is when I sold the property. And I got to tell you, I didn't think in my wildest dreams that anybody would want to do no monthly payments, because my mom desperately needed the monthly payments. And so I come to find out that there are people out there that will do deals, loan you money and not have to worry about monthly payments. And that was a real eye-opener for me. And then what happened was the market shifted again, and the going rate I see throughout the nation right now is between 6 and 8%. So I pay 3 different ways on my private lenders. One is I amortize the loan. That's my favorite, and let the loan pay down just like, you know, when you get a bank loan on your personal residence, and let it pay down. And that's the lowest interest rate. That's going to be around 4 or 5%. But if they want monthly payments like my mom did, I'd be at 6%. And then if they let the money accrue, it'd be 8%. So that's a structure of what I do now. And so, so Mom became my first lender. Along the way, I picked up another lender. His name was Ed. And I sit at his kitchen table, and he asked me a bunch of questions. I'm a little embarrassed to tell you I couldn't answer all of these questions that night, but because I was new at it. But he agreed to loan me money and became my second private lender. Now, you would think I would go out and get more private lenders, but at that juncture in my career, I didn't see the power and the potential. It took me 4 years to get another private lender. And the catalyst that made that happen was the company I was working with had a layoff. And they were looking for volunteers, so they offered a sweetened package where they'd pay you for a few months your normal wages if you'd volunteer. And I volunteered. I wanted to be a full-time real estate investor, and I honed my skills. And so I stepped out as a full-time real estate investor. And the only problem of it is the timing. There was a downturn in the rental market at that point. I had to evict some folks. I ran into a negative $10,000 a month cash flow problem. And that'll get your attention. And I had to do something. I was very skilled in corporate America at PowerPoint presentations. And I realized that I needed to communicate to people what my what I was doing was private money and the deals I was doing. And so I created a PowerPoint presentation, and I could go around and ask people one-on-one like I did with Mom and Ed, but I realized that with this negative $10,000 cash flow problem, I had to move quickly. And I sure the heck wasn't a speaker back then, but I decided that I needed to have a group meeting. And I called a meeting, and I got to tell you, the day I walked in there, I didn't know if I was going to be alone in the room or if there'd be 50 folks there. I just didn't know how many people were going to show up. And 18 did show up. And I got up in front of them. I told them about my real estate business. I told them about my dreams and my aspirations. I showed them a PowerPoint slide presentation, which was kind of the heart of the whole thing. And then I just flat out asked them to loan me money, and it worked. I didn't know it was going to work. So I did it again the next month. And I had 12 people show up. I did it all over again. It worked again. And a couple months later, I sat down with a pad and a pen, and I had $1 million to go buy property. It was life-changing.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. So were you at that point pooling their money together to buy properties, or were you doing one investor and one property at a time?
One investor, one property at a time. Where I live is the property's low end. In fact, I kid my students that, a luxury home for me is when I buy it, I don't need to put a toilet in it. I mean, we just, got low end property here. But so what I do is like you said, one property, one investor. But if I need more money, I just have a second investor come in and put a second mortgage on it. The person with the bigger chunk of money would get first position, and the lower chunk of money at second position. And so that's the way I do my deals now. Along the years, about 35% of my student base is commercial folks, and they're doing what you're talking about. It's where they're pooling, and I show them what programs they can use to do that, and spend a lot of time teaching that with folks. See, early on, I needed to learn about not only the fundamentals of getting private lenders, and people would tell you to get private lenders, but they wouldn't tell you how. And the how is critical, and I had to find it out for myself. So along the years, I honed my skills on how to attract and convert people into private money lenders. And also, there's some rules out there that you need to follow, and many real estate investors don't know that, or they don't understand them. And so I realized that I needed to know what the rules were for my business, and when I became a teacher, I obviously needed to know what they were for my students. And so I hired an attorney, and he researched every state in the United States and Canada. I've got students in both countries and a lot of foreign countries. Australia is another one. But I wanted to get the rules for us. And it's very expensive to do that. When he got done, he called me up and he said, "Hey, I want to thank you." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, I'm moving into my new house and you just bought it." That's not what you want to hear from anybody.
At least he's honest
so
with
much
you.
Money that you bought their house.
Alan, I want to talk about those rules. But before we get into that, when it comes to raising private money, what are the ways you see people going about it wrong in ways that could get them in trouble? You
have to be very, very honest with the private lender. And one of the slip ups that folks make a lot is by being in real estate, they get comfortable with it, and they feel that the money is guaranteed. And you can't say the word guarantee to a private lender, or you have violated a rule. And it's because that is misleading a private lender. Because real estate is risky. And we all really know that if you stand back and take a look at it. Even though we work really hard to to learn the right way to do things. You know, the market can change on us, and we don't have some control on that from time to time. So you can't mislead the lender by it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see, Brian, is they'll say low risk, or they'll say the word your money is secure. But I teach my students to put a D on the end of that, which is what my attorney taught me. I'm not an attorney. I don't give legal advice. What I do is share what my attorney told me so I could teach people. So on the word secure, you want to add a D on that. The money is secure because it's secured by the mortgage or promissory note, you know, on the real estate. So I would say that's the biggest number one mistake I see people making, to where they'll say the word guarantee. And that's actually, in the eyes of the SEC, who controls this on the rules, is considered fraud. And so, you know, if they find out about it, that you've done that, then, you know, they could give you a cease and desist or something like that.
Yeah. Have you seen people get in trouble for that type of thing?
Yes. Over the years, it happens every now and then where somebody doesn't get the training on it. And that's what sets me apart from everybody else, is because I've got the rules out there, fortunately, for us. And along the way, some people go out and they wing it without an education, and they just don't know. They get in trouble.
And just so people are clear, I mean, the reason you have to follow these rules is because of the SEC. Can you explain what the SEC is and why they're important to know about?
Yeah, there is the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission, and then every state will have a division of the SEC. So, and that'll be in the capital of that state. And so the ones that are the division, the SEC controls the commerce within the state, and then the federal SEC will cover if you cross state lines. And what happens is they have established some programs that we as real estate investors can use to borrow money. So the problem of it is people don't know what those programs are. And there's 7 programs that we can use, and some are federal and some are state. And so real estate investors that are attracting private money, they just need to know which program they can use. And that's exactly what I teach people, is which program you fit into. And it's very simple. In fact, I wanted to make sure that I had something simple and easy and clear for my students. And so I created a questionnaire where you answer 3 questions, and it'll tell you exactly which program you can use. And my students love it. The first time I rolled it out at an event, I got a standing ovation. So there's just nothing else like it on the planet. And the thing about it is that people don't understand. First off, they don't understand the rules, but once we get them trained on that, you know, then they understand and things go good. So it is the rules are very easy, though. They're not hard. It's just the fact that people don't know what they are.
When it comes to rental property insurance, understanding the costs, choices, and benefits can be overwhelming, and finding the right insurance provider can be frustrating. I had one company cancel 5 of my policies all at once for no good reason, and that's why I'm happy to have Mike Murphy from JB Harrison Insurance on my team. Mike is an independent agent who has always been able to find the right policy and the best provider for my insurance needs. Over the past 5 years, Mike has not only become my go-to insurance agent, he's also helped me manage risk, add value, and save money. If you are looking for insurance on a new acquisition, or you believe it's time to get a more comprehensive look at your entire portfolio, then Mike Murphy is the independent agent to call for all your insurance needs, auto, home, and business, at 616-868-0050, or email mikem@jbhins.com. What are some of those rules then?
Well, the first one's my favorite. Is where you can borrow from people that you know, and you don't have to fill out any paperwork. You can go out, but you need to know how many lenders you can have in a year and how much money you can borrow in a year. Typically, it's $1 million. Now, there's ways to go unlimited, and everybody wants to go unlimited, but you're working with people that you know, and so there are 13 states out there that have to fill out a piece of paper and maybe spend a little bit of money to be able to do the same thing as the other states. But like in my state, I'm in Ohio, I can go out and get private lenders as soon as we get off the call. I mean, it's not a problem. At the other end of the spectrum, which would be a federal one, would be what people know as syndication in the old terms. Today it's called private placement memorandum. Is you create a document that explains what you do, and then you're able to go out and amass unlimited amount of money, use it in any state, and have unlimited lenders. So there is two different ones of those. One is called a Rule B, and the other is called a Rule C. And in the C, you can advertise. In the B, you can't. So you just ask people for money. Syndication,
then, that's something you teach as well?
Yep, I sure do.
A lot of people are interested in that.
Yeah, like I said, I got about 35% of my student base. They're doing commercial stuff. The other thing folks want to do is they want to advertise. When you asked me about what are some of the pitfalls on this, I said there were, misleading the lender on being, guarantee and all that. But the other thing is people want to advertise rather than working with strangers, which is what I just explained, working with people that I call it family, friends, and associates. If you want to advertise, you can do that too. But what the SEC has done is ask us to fill out a piece of paper and pay a small fee. Sometimes it's no fee, and be able to advertise within your state to attract private money. And I teach that. There's some different rules and stuff like that on that I get into, but it's nothing hard. It's just people just need to know what they are. And so, when I look at what I'm going to, what I normally teach is the part of it is the fundamentals. It's kind of like a sporting event, a football game. Let's say I was an offensive and defensive guard in high school. And what the coach would do would teach me how to get down in the position and how to block and how to tackle, and teaching me the fundamentals of the game. And what he also did was he handed me a rule book and said, if you're carrying the ball and you go 10 yards, you get a first down. You're carrying the ball and step out of bounds, play stop. You're carrying the ball and go across the goal line, you get a touchdown. Dealing with private lenders is exactly the same. You need to know the fundamentals, which you said right at the start, that I teach people how to attract and convert people into private money lenders. What they also need, us real estate investors, is we need to know the rules. And here again, the rules are not hard. It's just that nobody else is teaching them at the level that I'm teaching them. Nobody.
What are some of the ways that people can go about attracting and converting people into private money lenders?
What I would do is I would start with a list. I would put together a list of folks that at least 20 people. I wouldn't screen them out because what happens is you might have somebody that you think is broke, and here they've got an old 401k in a company they used to work for that they don't know what to do with, and we can use that. We can roll that over into a self-directed IRA. And so I would make a list of 20 folks, and then I would come up with a script on what you'd want to say to them. And I like to take that script in two levels at the start. One is what I call magic words, which is which I would just ask them, do you have any investment money that's not currently earning a secured high rate of return? And what we're looking for there is, do they have any money or are they broke? So it's a pre-screening little paragraph. And then if they say, well, what are you talking about? Or, I've got some money, it's not making a lot. Well, then you move into what I call my elevator speech, or a 30-second commercial, where I would say, I'm a real estate investor in Springfield, Ohio, and at times I borrow money from folks just like you. I pay a high rate of return. Can I tell you more? And so that sets the stage on whether they got money or not on the pre-screening part of it. And then if they do have money, or they might know somebody, then you move into that second thing, which just explains in a terse statement what you do. And that's how half of my students get money. The other half will do a luncheon like I did, and and approach lenders that way. So, but when the best way for folks is to just go ask people that they know for money, family, friends, and associates. Now, some folks might be in the NFL club, no friends left. Well, in that case, you're going to have to advertise, and you just need to know the paperwork in your state to go do that.
I know when I got started out raising money, and I know a lot of other investors have this problem, is you get real nervous about what to say and how to say it right. Is that something you teach, and what are some tips you would have?
Oh, no question. I've been teaching it for years. I actually within this last year, I took it up a level where I have a document that I give students. It's called the Path to Wealth. And on the Path to Wealth is the first two items I just gave you, my magic words and 30-second commercial. And then if the potential private lender says no, I tell folks what to do with that, which is just move on, or you could ask for referral. If they say, let me think about it, then I would hand them some information that would let them know a little bit about what private lending is all about. And so what I encourage my students to do is I created an audio CD that they can hand out to people that it's 22 minutes, and it just explains what private lending is all about and why that person should loan you money. And I used to have my voice on it, and I took it up a level. I have a radio talk show host because they have a very compelling voice. That's why they're on the radio. And so I gave them a script, and they recorded it, and it's 22-minute audio that I hand out, my students hand out. And so powerful. And then at the end of that, they come back and, if they like what they heard, they're going to loan you money. And so, and I got a special report, which is 12 questions and answers on what private lending is all about. So if a person has questions, or just one question, there's a high likelihood that it's going to be in one of those 12 questions. And so when they read that special report, it'll answer their question, and then my student doesn't have to. It's all done for them.
I'd like to hear some success stories that you have, either your own success stories or your students' success stories.
Well, it can go both ways. I mean, one of my favorite stories about one of my students is that I had this guy call me up that was coming to my live event, and he said, and he had signed up for my live event, and he wanted to know if I was for real. So he says, "Are you for real?" I said, "Yeah." I said, he said, "Well, I need a lot of money." And I said, his name was Carl. I said, "Carl, I can't guarantee you're going to get a dime, but a lot of people that do what I ask them to do get a lot of money." And we talked for a little bit, and he said, "I'm coming." And so what I do at my live event, I have a 4-day event, is that we raise money right at the event the first day. And we typically raise multi-millions of dollars at the event, the first 24 hours. And so that's money that my students raise based on my teaching. And so he came to the event, and the next day he had $42 million.
Wow.
And he was ecstatic. Yeah. He was like the best ever that I've ever had. He was amazing. And he raised more money. I saw him 9 months after that, and he raised a lot more money. He's one of these guys that are really connected out there. But that's what happens. So success stories for me. A couple of deals I like to talk about. I had a short sale, and the property was a nice property. It was on 5 acres, had a pond in the front, a stream in the back, and a pole barn and a stable behind the home. And the guy and his wife wasn't making payments on it, and I stepped in with private money, and then within three months, the place cashed out for $42,219. The nice thing about it is he had a second property, which was a duplex, and he deeded me the duplex. So I ended up with 2 properties on one deal. Another property was a subject to, where a lady wanted, she'd been through a divorce and wanted to get rid of the house and move on. And she wanted all cash for the house. Now, I could do that, but I noticed that it had a low interest mortgage on it that was less than what I was paying my private lenders. And I asked her to keep that mortgage out there, and I would make payments on the home, but she had to deed me the house so I had the right to eventually sell the house. And she agreed if I would give her $39,000. Now, that's a showstopper for a lot of people that are probably listening right now. But with me, it's a phone call. It's just like ordering pizza. I pick up a phone and I order money, just like you order pizza. So I called up one of my private lenders, and her name was Libby, and she loaned me $50,000, which is what I asked her to loan me. I needed the $39,000, but I always borrow extra. And everybody listening right now ought to write this down. When you're dealing with a private lender, you got four things that you need to cover: the selling price, or in this case, her walking money, the closing cost, your rehab cost, and then I always borrow extra. I call it contingency money, which means contingent. If I run into a problem, I got the money to fix. And so I always borrow extra. And the second thing you want to write down is don't take every dime out of the property. You want to leave a bigger chunk of money when you sell the property. So I always borrow a little right up front, and then I have a bigger chunk at the back. And so she agreed. And so we went to a closing, and she left the first mortgage out there, which I'd make payments on, and then she walked away with $39,000. But I had an $11,000 extra chunk of cash coming out of closing, and I took $3,000 of it, and I did a little TLC. I wanted to spruce up the landscaping and clean up some stuff on the inside, so I used $3,000 for that. And that left me $8,000. What could I do with that? I could do anything with it. It's early profit. But this property had a first mortgage on it and monthly payments, and so I used some of that money to make the mortgage payments on that. And I sold the place and walked away with $49,500 when I was done.
That was after paying back your lender?
Yeah, that was afterwards.
I know you invest in single family and multifamily. Are you still out there doing deals, raising money for yourself, or are you primarily focused on teaching others how to do this?
I got properties. I'm always going to have properties. I got a property right now. Some people are going to fall out of a chair on this. We bought it for $9,200, and then I put another 10 into it, and I've got folks in it renting right now, but what I'm talking to them about is doing a land contract and owning the property, them owning the property in 14 years. And so I'm more interested in letting them take care of any repairs and anything that comes up along the way, and where I get out of that and just have them make payments to me. So I still got properties. I spent a lot of my time teaching what happened over the years. I started out with one home study system on teaching people how to get private lenders, and then I started to learn more about the SEC and the big vacuum that we have in our industry of people not knowing the rules and all that. So I created some systems on that, and now I've got, something like 80 different systems and a bunch of ebooks and stuff like that. So so just what I do is I look for a need in our business, in our industry, and I fill that need. And so there's about three things that I've brought to this market that was never there before that is helping real estate investors out when it comes to private money and the SEC.
So, Alan, what can you tell our listeners who are able to come see you and hear you speak at the Michigan Landlord and Real Estate Investor Free Conference and Expo? Why should they come hear you speak? What are they going to get out of that time they spend with you?
First off, if you're not using private money, then you are not in control of your funding. And you've got to be in control of your funding. The only way to be in control of your funding is private money. If you're using a line of credit, which I've done before early on before I had private lenders, they can jerk that credit at any time. Now, they didn't do that on me, but I know that a student up in the New England states His name's Keith, and he had a $284,000 line of credit, and he'd buy a property, fix a property with the money, give the money back when he sold the property to the lending institutions, and then we'd find another property and pull it out again. Well, one day, they wouldn't give his money back. They had changed the rules. And so here it was going to kill his business, but fortunately, he had my system. Just got to take it out of the plastic to use it, and he did. And 3 weeks later, he had $750,000, way over the $284,000 that he had. And he was so happy. He wrote me a great testimonial. So my point is here, if you're using different ways to fund your deals, hard money lenders, I'd rather have you be a hard money lender. I'd rather have you get so much money with private money that you can become a hard money lender. And some of my students do that. And they're expensive, but it's better if you're that person loaning the money out. And going to banks, I mean, I've had the first one I used, they had regulators come in and look at their books and said, you can't do those type of creative loans anymore. And they shut all of us creative real estate investors off. I went to another bank, was with them for a few years. And what happened was I had 4 properties at the time with them, and they changed the rules. And they shut me off. I was up in Minnesota and at a Saturday event, and I had a student that was in the room. We were doing a workshop, and he wanted to come over and talk to me and sat next to me at lunch. And what happened was he was supposed to be closing on a deal the day before, and the bank stopped it right before they got to closing, and he was desperate. And he desperately needed to figure out how to get private money so he could go get the property. So banks, lines of credit, hard money lenders, they're all in control. The other thing is we all do creative financing. But if you can't fund a deal like for walking money, like that $39,000 that I gave that lady, then you're not going to be able to do the deal, and you lose maybe the deal of the century for you. But you see, with private money, it solves all those problems because you find a private lender, and I'd recommend you get multiple private lenders, and you just call them up and ask them to loan you money for a deal, and they're ready to loan you money. In fact, when you pay them back, when you sell the property and pay them back, they'll call you up, and they're begging to give you the money. And that's a beautiful thing, to have somebody begging you to take their money rather than you going around begging for money. So to answer your question, one of the things I'm going to talk about is that right there, is why we ought to use private money when I come up to see you guys. The other thing is I'm going to give details exactly, step by step on my luncheon so that everybody could do the same thing after the event, if they so desire. I'm going to get into a lot of lessons that I've learned, Incredibles. I'm going to show a little tool that I use that made all the difference in the world for me at my luncheons, those 2 luncheons. The first luncheon, when I got done with my talk and I was going to buy them lunch, I said, let's have lunch. Well, what happened was they needed some direction from me, and I needed feedback from them, and neither one of us got it. And so the next couple of weeks, I'm calling people up, and it's actually the wrong posture to put yourself in. My second luncheon, I fixed that, and I've got a little 1-page form that I'll show everybody, that when I got done with my slides, I said, please fill that form out, and let's have lunch. And so I stand between them and the lunch, and they hand me that form on the way to lunch, and people will just be compelled to peek and see how much money they got loaned to them. Just imagine having your first luncheon and you use that simple technique that I just talked about in the form, and people have loaned you, $400,000. I mean, that's how fast it can happen. I had 2 luncheons, I had $1 million. So that form just made all the difference in the world to me. Was that a call to action type form that allowed you to close the sale? Yeah, it was exactly right. Thank you. Yeah. Well said. It starts out with, who they are. And then there's 3 questions that I ask them. And then at the bottom, I put down check boxes on how much money they want to loan me and whether it's IRA money or not. And so one of the beautiful things about this business is IRAs, self-directed IRAs. And 401, if you got a dormant 401k or your lender does, they can roll that over into a self-directed IRA. And I'm going to talk about that and the 4 things you need to know about an IRA. That's the pot of gold for us. What happened to me when I got into this business and started to learn about private lenders, I started out my money stream with private lenders, started out as a little trickle, and then it moved into a stream, and then it moved into a river. But when it turned into a flood is when I found out about 401ks that people had left in companies because they quit, retired, or gotten laid off. And I'm going to talk about that quite a bit because I ended up with so much money I couldn't spend it all, Brian. And what happened to me was, now I could have moved over into a hard money lender, but what I decided to do was ratchet up my business. And so I had so much money that I needed to get out. I needed to have someone help buy houses for me. And I hired a guy that had been working in corporate America 24 years and was laid off. And he was running out of money. And I knew him, and I knew he was a good guy, smart guy. And so I hired him, and he came on board for me mid-September. And from mid-September to Christmas, he bought me 21 properties, spending my private money. And then he bought another 48 in 8 months. And so that's a lot of private money, a lot of deals. But the only reason he could do that is because I have systems. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with your folks is the systems I have on private money.
Wow, that's a lot that we're going to be able to learn when you come to the conference. And just want to remind all of our listeners that you will be speaking at the Michigan Landlord Real Estate Investor Free Conference and Expo, which is happening here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, February 21st through 23rd of 2019. And you are speaking on Friday, February 22nd. I will be there. I'm looking forward to hearing you speak. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. Great information on finding those private investors, complying with SEC rules, making sure you're doing it right, not running afoul of the rules and regulations. And I look forward to hearing more about this in February. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Well, I appreciate it. It's great talking to you, and I hope this has helped some folks. And I encourage everybody to show up. You know, if you're doing business, or even if you haven't done a deal yet, you know, you need to come in and learn about private money. And even if you're an experienced real estate investor, and maybe you've got 1 or 2 lenders, what I find is so many times you're doing it wrong as far as some of the rules, and you can learn quite a lot from what I'm going to teach. My whole goal, in fact, I'm told, Brian, that minute for minute I deliver as much or more training information as anybody out there. So I want to make sure that people get that. I have a passion for this, and it's so important that people show up to get the training, because, like I said early on, it's the foundation of this business, and funding your deals is one of the biggest hurdles that most people have to get over. Yeah,
I certainly know that a lot of investors I talk to are able to find deals, but they don't know how to fund them. So, you know, this is where you learn how to do it.
This is it. Yep. Looking forward to it. Everybody show up.
This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Mike Murphy at JB Harrison Insurance, helping real estate investors to understand and choose their best options for all their insurance needs. Call 616-868-0050 or email mikem@jbhins.com. You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.